we got a chance to get inside some of the stores and shops as well. So I just thank you guys for your devotion to this effort. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over and introduce Jim. I just said Jim Thompson. I'm so sorry. Jim Eagle. I heard this other name, Jim. So Jim Eagle is the director of the Downtown Resource Center at the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Thanks, Jim.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be in Sac County. We appreciate all the hospitality. I want to find out, is it possible to have all the communities in the county together without a fight breaking out? I think so, based on what we've seen so far. But we do, we actually have a 7-person team if you include Maya's baby. Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce the team now. Maya Fiala-Jessen is a design specialist for the Iowa Downtown Resource Center Main Street program. We have Terry Poe Bushkamp, who is a promotion specialist for the Iowa Downtown Resource Center. Travis Tolliver, who is a Main Street Chamber Director for Waverly, Iowa. Robin Bostrom, who is a business specialist for the Iowa Downtown Resource Center. Myself, Jim Eagle, I'm the director of the Iowa Downtown Resource Center, and then we have Dennis Reynolds, who doesn't work for us. Dennis has his own design firm in Des Moines, so he's going to be showing you a lot of drawings that he did for the communities in Sac County. But I want to start the thing off, and I'm going to end it. I didn't have to do as much work as these guys, it felt like this time. But I want to tell you a little bit about what we've done for 3 days. As Kathy said, we call this a county-wide downtown assessment. It's really not a deep dive because we only have a couple of days to spend in a lot of towns. So they were kind of quick in and out trying to visit. But we had meetings with 5 communities that we focused on in the county. And then we actually walked those downtown areas in those communities. But then we also did a drive-through in all of the other downtowns in the county, because we're going to talk about some collaborative county-wide efforts too that any community in Sac County could participate in. So that was kind of the format of our visit. When we make recommendations, we're really honest. We don't like to sugarcoat things. So I told some people yesterday, if your weeds need pulled, we're just going to tell you to pull your weeds. And if you go home mad, that's fine, as long as you pull the weeds later. But we're really honest. We think that's more productive. Today, we're going to talk about some common strengths that we saw in each of the communities and their downtowns. We're also going to talk about some common issues that we thought could be worked on in every one of the communities we were in. And then we're going to go through each of 5 towns, Auburn, Lakeview, Odie-Bolt, Sac City, and Wall Lake are the towns we're going to focus on. But like I said earlier, we did drive-throughs in all of the other communities too. So they're certainly added to the mix. So we're going to go through all these towns and talk about their individual strengths, and then some challenges and some recommendations that we have, and then we'll close it up. After we leave today, in 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to send back a written report to you. This is kind of a summary. We don't have a lot of time today, so this is kind of a summary of that report. But after we send you the report, you'll have all the recommendations that you can use. I'm going to start off. Could you hit a slide? Oh, could you go back just for a second? I want to see who's here today. Anybody here from Auburn? Great. How about Carnarvon? I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Did I say it right? I've struggled all week with that word. Early? Anyone here from Early? Okay. How about Lakeview? You better be here from Lakeview. How about Lytton? Okay. Nemaha? All right. Odie-Bolt. I learned how to say that this week too.
Yeah.
Sac City? All right. Shaler?
Shaler.
I'm sorry.
Why?
I messed up another one. Shaler. Ulmer? How about Wall Lake? Okay, so it's a good representation. Robin, if you can hit the slide, I'm going to start off by just talking about some really cool things that we saw in every community we're in, or almost every community we were in. So these are just common strengths that you all have. First of all, we thought that every community that we talked to, all seemed really open to ideas. There's a lot of good discussion. You're already doing good things. The second thing on the list is the Hometown Pride Committee. I go to a lot of small towns that don't have structure. They have all these ideas, but there's not like a group. And it's kind of amazing that nothing exists in some of the communities to actually mobilize and get things done. A strength that you have is the Hometown Pride Group, because Kathy's leading the communities in an effort to actually get projects done. And one of the questions we asked the group the last 2 days is what Hometown Pride's been doing. And it was pretty amazing, the projects we heard. So just the structure of that group is really good. Travis's question in all of our meetings was, how's the quality of life in your community? And we only heard positive things there. People love where they live. It's good quality of life. People love it here. Every community we're in, it was kind of weird, because when we went from town to town, you could just feel the difference. All the towns were about the same size, but they all had a different vibe. They were all unique, and it seemed like they all had something special, whether that be Andy Williams, or a really cool building in this town, or there was something cool in all the communities. Anyone know where that church is?
Nemaha.
Nemaha. What a cool church when we drove through Nemaha. Proximity. The towns in Sac County are very close together, which we think is a great opportunity for collaboration. One of the things, and I'm not just saying this because we work in a lot of towns, the downtowns tend to be really clean. And like I said, we work in a lot of downtowns across the state, and constantly making maintenance kinds of recommendations. But we thought everything was really well kept in most all the communities. And the homes, too, very well kept. Strong community centers. We had a feeling that someone did a really good one, and all the other towns got jealous and they did one too. Because it seemed like the communities in Sac County have really nice buildings, community centers for public events. We were impressed too that there are county-wide meetings for, is it for city clerks, administrators? Anybody in councils? Councils. That's really cool, because we don't see that everywhere either. So one town doesn't know what the other is doing. So keeping those communication lines is open. We are also impressed that every community in the county is so close to some kind of recreational activity. And then finally, something that we harp on is downtown housing. Downtowns that are popping usually have a housing component in the upper floors, which someone's going to talk about here today, I believe. But we were going to recommend a countywide housing study, and you guys said, oh, we're already doing that. So we took that off our recommendation list, but we think that's really impressive to better understanding the existing housing, the market, and how to create more housing in the community, the downtown, the community. Okay. I got ahead of myself here. Okay, here's one more. Where's the school building?
Shaler.
Shaler.
Long hair.
That's not fair. You can't answer your own question. I wanted someone else to say Shaler. All right. I'm going to turn the mic over to Maya and her baby. And Maya's going to talk about some common issues. And you can call these problems, challenges, issues, but we think these are things that are prevalent in just about every community that we saw. Maya.
Thank you. So like Jim said, we have a handful of things that we saw kind of in each of the communities we visited. Rather than repeating them over and over, thought it would be good to just address them at the beginning. So one of the first things we noticed right away was business signage. And we see this pretty much everywhere we go, that businesses aren't always really good at telling their story outside, telling who they are and what they do. And especially in small towns where we all know where everything is, right? So we know that there's ice cream and great food at this business here. But when you have people like us coming from outside, when you have the lake and have tourists coming, when you have people coming for different school events into different communities, those people don't know that these things, what is in these buildings. We saw someone coming out there with great looking ice cream, so that's how we know, ooh, hey, let's go get some ice cream. But otherwise, there's nothing about this that says it's a food establishment. It's on a really prime corner as you come into downtown Wall Lake. So just something to think about, looking at the outside of your buildings, and are you really telling what you do? Are you really advertising to people about your business and getting them to come inside? And on the flip side of that, when we have businesses that are no longer in operation, get those signs down, get those windows cleaned out. It just kind of lends to that feeling of disinvestment downtown when you have old faded signage and things that aren't intact anymore. So that was 2 examples of business signage. Go ahead. But we did see some really good signage examples here, and you can see there's a lot of different types. Kind of the flush mount signs up here that go on the front of the building, integrating it into awnings over the storefronts. Having it on windows is really great because as a pedestrian you see that activity in the windows when you're walking by. So some recommendations we had around that. First, remove that old signage. We've had communities that just get together a bunch of volunteers on a Saturday and within a few hours get all that down, scrape it off the windows, and it makes a huge difference. Consider creating some signage incentives, whether that's individual cities or on a county-wide level. But a couple $100 in a matching grant can really go a long way to doing some quality signage. Locate local fabricators, people that can help with that, so you have those resources ready to help business owners. And then provide some design assistance to businesses if you can, because there's a big difference between just slapping up a sign and having a really nice sign that shows your personality. So whether you have a graphic designer somewhere locally that could help with that, we have a lot of examples that we'll send with the report that just show some really, really neat ideas for signage. And then second, kind of along with that, looking at the business presentation, is our storefront windows. Storefront windows make a huge difference in the feel of downtown, especially when you're walking down as a pedestrian, whether things feel active and welcoming or whether they just feel kind of shut down. And even businesses that aren't retail-oriented business, that aren't selling gifts and things like that, can do a lot with window displays. Like the salon and spa here, they're not selling crates or flowers, but they're showing kind of this nice, relaxing ambiance inside. And don't forget about vacant buildings too. We can do a lot with those other than just having them be closed off. You can't always get inside some of those places, but you can do vinyl graphics on the outsides of those, putting murals in over paneled windows, just things that add some color, some vibrancy, just makes it look like a little something is going on there. The first thing we noticed, even just washing windows makes a big difference. We noticed a lot that looked like they hadn't been touched in a while, and I know we've had a lot of rain and things like that, but whether that's combined with a downtown cleanup or done a few times a year, just getting out and washing some of those windows makes a huge difference. I don't want to volunteer anybody, but there were a few businesses in the county that are doing a really great job with their window displays, and maybe they would be willing to do some workshops around with other business owners, some sort of one-on-one training to help them work on their windows. Again, don't forget about those vacant buildings. That makes a huge difference. And then maybe consider another grant for doing more appropriate windows. We have a lot of these closed-in windows. If we can open up those spaces a lot more, that lends to that sense of liveliness and gives you a lot more opportunity for displays. Jim mentioned upper story housing, and housing was a common problem we heard in all 5 communities we visited. It's a problem with every community across the state, really. But one of the areas that we love to focus on is upper story housing, because it fills that need of creating extra living spaces. But we also heard everybody say, we want more people downtown, we want night activity downtown. And when you have people living in your downtown, that's the best way to get those people there, because they're there at all hours of the day. They want to be able to walk out their front door and go eat, go to the bar, go run their errands. So it really builds in a great audience for your downtown. So get out and tour some finished spaces. I think there was a group that had already been to Woodbine. They have a lot of great examples there of projects they've completed. This is a great example that we were fortunate to get into yesterday in Sac City. But just get out and see what people are doing, get some inspiration, ask them how they did it, what sort of financial programs they use. Just really get some inspiration to start. And then inventory your opportunities. Make sure you know what you have in your downtown, how many spaces might be available. So if grant programs or things come up, you're a little bit ready to go there. Another thing to consider is doing a tour of spaces that aren't finished yet. We've had a lot of communities that do these vacant spaces tours, and it just allows people to get in these raw, unfinished spaces, see a lot of the cool characteristics that are in these downtown buildings, you know, the high ceilings, the huge windows, the brick walls. People love getting in and seeing that stuff. So that's a great opportunity to get people more interested and involved. And then investigate some funding opportunities for that. And Jim will talk a little bit about some of those later, but we have a catalytic program in our agency that can help with some upper story school building rehab projects. Volunteerism, another one that's a struggle pretty much everywhere. Volunteering has changed quite a bit. People aren't always as willing to just say, yeah, I'm interested, I'll come up all day, help where I needed. But people really want to know what they're signing up for, when they're signing up for it, and they want to be asked. You know, most people aren't just looking around for stuff to do. We're all busy, we all have things going on. But if somebody makes a personal ask to you, you're more likely to come. So look at what you need volunteers for, break them down into really small segments. We volunteer at a music festival, and it's 3-hour shifts. You're either selling beer, and that's all you're doing. You're taking tickets, that's all you're doing. But you know exactly what's expected, and when you go home, it makes it a lot easier to get people to commit to that. And then make that ask. Make a call, whether it's through church, through work, through Facebook, through the newspaper. But ask somebody to get involved. Ask them, I know you're good at this. I think you'd have a lot of fun doing it. And see if you can get them to come out. And then people talked a lot about it's harder to get younger people involved. Maybe we're not doing events that they're interested in coming to. So maybe there's some things like movie nights, beer tents, wine crawls, things like that that they may be a little more likely to get involved with. So maybe kind of evaluate what events you're doing and who you're asking for each one. Okay, here's a few of our snaps from our week here. Jim mentioned that you have a lot of unique things. Each community had some kind of quirk or some interesting story that we didn't know about. But we're not always good at telling that story. You know, we get a little bit Iowa nice and a little bit humble. But sometimes we need to brag about that stuff and tell that story, get that out there. I did not know who Andy Williams was before this week. But as in my defense, as we started talking about him, I knew his songs, I knew who he was, I just didn't know him by name. So that's probably the case for a lot of people. So tell that story a little bit. There was nothing about Moon River or anything at this site. So how can you get that out there a little bit more? And of course, the popcorn ball here in Sac City. So again, brag about yourselves. Get that out there. If you're, get on the tourism websites, have that stuff on Facebook. You can use public art to tell those stories a little bit more. This is a mural down in Centerville, and they have kind of a series of these that tell the story of people that are from their town, of cool events that happened, and just get that out there a little bit more. Create some social media selfie spots like you just saw that we had there, but call a little bit more of attention to those. And then tie into some current events or create new ones. You know, we saw popcorn all over the county and learned that Cracker Jack was born here and Jolly Time and all these things have connections here. But play some of that stuff up a little bit more. Another thing, city incentives. A lot of, we all want more businesses to come and buildings to be rehabbed, but nobody really had set programs to do that. A lot of them said, well, if people come, yeah, we probably do that, but people aren't always coming to ask that. They want to know what's available ahead of time. So talk to your building owners, talk to business owners, see what they would need, and then develop incentives around that. Whether it's something really specific, like signage, roofs, windows, or whether it's more of a blanket overall building rehab program. Create some incentives to help with that local reinvestment. And when you do that, tie guidelines back to those incentives, so you're having quality projects done. You're using appropriate materials, appropriate design for downtowns. And then lastly, we thought we would throw this in here just as we spent the last few days here. It's tough when places don't accept credit cards as tourists coming in. When you're trying to accommodate more to tourists, credit cards are just the most common form of payment now. I never carry cash. Luckily, Kathy warned us, so I was able to go get cash before we came here this week.
So I wouldn't be paying for yours.
Yes, because that's what would have happened.
I didn't believe him and wrote a lot of checks.
Yeah. And luckily they vouched. You weren't local, but they still took your check.
Yeah.
But really, it's more accommodating to tourists, results in higher sales. I'll pay more when I just swipe my credit card, which don't tell my husband that, but than when I'm handing over cash. And it does cost, I know, to process those, so build those costs into your pricing. You know, the food here was not expensive by any means. Add that in and people will pay. Okay, so that's over to Robin.
All right, so we're going to talk just a little bit about each of the communities and some of the strengths that we saw and some of the opportunities that we see for the community. So I'm going to start with our little visit to Auburn. So obviously, those of you, if you've ever been through Auburn, their strengths are they have beautiful flowers and gardens. They have a great core of local volunteers that are taking care of that. And just as somebody who drives through, it makes you slow down and you're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. So great job on that. Continue to build on that. Again, we felt like that was a really clean, well-kept community. So to tourists, we see that, and to people from the outside, that shows pride in place and ownership. So all of you do a great job in that. And again, I said, when we visited with them, there's a small but mighty group of people there doing some pretty awesome work. And I see a couple of those flower ladies here who are doing great things. So keep doing what you're doing. You guys have good traffic counts. There's a lot of people coming through that community because of the highway, and even just when we were walking, we were like, wow, there's a lot of traffic here. So think about that. Think about the people that are in their car. What can you do to get them to look, to stop, to slow down a little bit, and maybe get out of their car? Because the longer we linger, the more we open our wallet. And that's what you want us to do. You want to suck the money out of my wallet into your coffers. Okay, and like Maya said, I don't want my husband to know that, and when I took this job, he said, gosh, do you have to shop in every town you're in? Like, well, yeah, sometimes I do. I'm the economic person. I'm supposed to help make a retail economic impact, so I like to shop. You want my money. So make sure that you're doing that. You also in Auburn, you guys are very close. You have strong recreational opportunities, and I know that you're already working on some of that, so continue to do that. In Auburn, they have a community dinner. Help me out, ladies. Happens once a month, correct?
Right.
It's a community dinner where people just come, and it's a free will donation. They are bringing the community together. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing they are doing. And so we're going to talk about some opportunities for elders to do that and how you can build upon that's already happening. Again, some of their challenges, what we heard before, small volunteer pool. And we see that in almost everywhere in Iowa, and we all know it. 20% of the people do 80% of the work in the volunteering. But continue to build upon that. Communication is a challenge that we have no matter what size our communities are. And sometimes it's especially small in new communities. When you're the new person who moves in and you're not from there, you weren't born there, and you haven't lived there very long, you can live there 30 years and you're still not a local. Okay, so we in Iowa have to do a better job of welcoming our neighbors and our friends, especially those new folks, to our community. So how can you communicate with them? Look for some opportunities to do that. And again, identify those traffic patterns. In your communities, what are the businesses that people are at? Where are they going? So you as a community need to identify who those anchors are in your community and find ways to, again, cluster your businesses, or how do we keep those people here longer when they're coming for those certain things. One of the things we heard in Auburn is that there's not a good program to welcome new businesses. So they have a beautiful coffee shop there, but the coffee shop owner said, you know, nobody did a grand opening, nobody did a welcome for me, and so let's all think about that. Again, when those new businesses open, all of you sitting in this room are playing some sort of leadership role in your community. You need to be the person that walks in the door and says, thank you, welcome, we're so glad you're here. And do it often. Let those business owners know. I was a small business owner for many years. My husband and I owned the grocery store in our community of about 2,200. And it's hard when you're the business owner. You're there 60 hours a week sometimes, and you're doing everything. And sometimes you're just like, gosh, does anybody care that I'm here? So sometimes just going and telling those small business people, recognizing them when they have anniversaries, when they've been open a year, when you've made it 5 years, when you've been here 50 years. Make sure those people know that you are glad they are in your community, because they are really, really important to the economic development that's happening. They have Grant Park, which is very close to Auburn, and I know they're working on some opportunities to connect the park to the downtown and the community through trails, and so we're going to continue to send you some resources to help you continue to build on that. One of the issues that we see in a lot of our small communities is first floor residential, where people have taken a first floor and turned it into a residence because, as a building owner, sometimes we'd rather have somebody living there than it being vacant. However, it's really hard to get that retail space back. And so we would caution you to really try to make sure that your residential is either happening upstairs or at least in the rear of that first floor retail space, so that you're keeping those commercial spaces open for business opportunities that might come your way. And again, business signage is something that we saw a lot that needs to be improved. What I love is when you tell us when you're open. But if you're going to post it on your front door that you're open from 9 to 7 and I come at 3:30 and you're closed, not so good. Okay? So if you need time off, work that into your schedule, but make sure your hours of operation as a business owner are posted. And if you are leadership people in your community, help your businesses do that. You know, really take a walk, identify who needs to be open and is it posted for those of us who are visitors. So again, let's talk a little bit about this community dinner thing. They have great attendance, about 50 people, which in a population of about 300 people, that's awesome. So how can you build on that? Use those opportunities when you bring your communities together to talk about what's happening in town. What are the things that you're working on? What do you need people to help with? And you don't have to make it be an hour presentation, but find a way to communicate quickly about the cool things that are happening in your community and to build that communication network. Communication is usually the biggest issue where we have problems in our communities. And when we're the local people doing it, or we're a city official and it's what you do every day, you're like, well, how can everybody not know about this? This is what I do 24/7. How come you all don't know about this? But we have to talk to people consistently over and over and over again. Most of us get so much information, we need to hear things 5 to 7 times before it clicks in our head, or it won't matter to me about this program until that's what I'm thinking I want to do. So even though you have that communication out there, try to find ways to do that and really get it out there. When you are doing, if you can create a community bulletin board in your community, someplace where people go, where it's outside, it's protected from the elements, where you can share information, try to do something like that. And you'll see an example of just an outdoor space where people can post community events. So if I know what's going on, or I at least have a place where I can go and say, oh yeah, that's where I'm going to find out information about that. You can also do that through your social media channels. And as a business specialist, we do survey work all across the state. Social media in the last 4 to 5 years has now become the #1 way customers in Iowa are telling us that they get information about a business and about community events. So your businesses need to be engaged on social media, and you as community partners need to be engaged on social media as well. In Iowa, Facebook is #1, Pinterest is #2, and YouTube is #3, and Instagram is rising. So you definitely need to engage on those social platforms. And find, if you don't know how to do it, find local partners or folks that can come and help do some training to help you understand how to utilize that. And again, in our small communities, don't compete with events. So I think one of the things we identified when we were in Auburn is that the coffee shop does this wonderful music night, but it was the same night they were having their great community dinner, and they didn't even realize that the two were going on. So again, communicate and let's support each other, not compete with each other.
Does the state level offer any suggested consultants for social media assistance?
Yeah, we can give you lots of folks that do that sort of thing. We do a little bit of training through our office on that, but there are lots of folks around the state. Lots of community colleges have some folks that do that too, so we'll give you some resources in the full report that you can look at for that. As far as business development comes, look for opportunities to welcome and celebrate those businesses. I kind of talked about that earlier. Not just when they're brand new, but when they hit that 5-year mark or when they have, you know, something special going on. Celebrate the people that you have. It is far easier to keep the businesses that you have than to recruit new. Much easier. So support what you have, folks. Again, know those traffic patterns. Know when people are coming and going and how can you build upon those strong traffic patterns. Make sure you all know the traffic counts that are coming in and out of your community, and if you're a small business owner, find out. If you're on a major highway, find out what the traffic count is that's coming. DOT and most of your county folks can help you get those numbers. Look for opportunities for cross promotions. So if this is happening in my store, how can I send them to the other store? Many of our communities do promotions which are called bounce over or bounce back events, where maybe if you're in my store, I'm going to give you a coupon for the very next day, but you're going to go to the guy down the street and you're going to maybe save 10%, and then they're going to do the same thing. So you're sending customers to each other. So again, we really need to help and support each other. And then if you have an opportunity in Auburn to just get together quarterly and talk about what's going on. Make it short and sweet. It's a half an hour, it's an hour, but try to do it quarterly so you're sharing what's going on with all those folks who want to know and be a part of it. Again, you have some great outdoor spaces, some beautiful parks. Program those spaces. Have some events that are happening in there. The Ryman Park gazebo area was beautiful, and I know you're working on that, but can there be events for kids and families there? Can story time at the library maybe come outside on a nice day? When people see people in spaces, I'm from a small town, and I know we have a lot of looky-loers. You all know what I'm talking about. When you drive by, the people who are like, what's going on in the park? I don't know what's going on in the park. I'm going to drive by and I'm going to go ask what's going on in the park because I didn't get an invite to what's going on in the park. So in small towns, we want to know what's going on. Program those spaces so people know what's happening and they're out there. They're going to want to come hang out, and then you'll get more people engaged and activated in those spaces. Music and evening activities are good. The other thing we heard there is that there's sometimes not a lot of lunchtime opportunities. So can you work with a food truck or somebody who's in another community to come in one day a week, one day a month, and be consistent to where, you know, maybe you can come in and there's a food truck to fill that void that you haven't filled yet. We hope that you get somebody there who's permanently for lunchtime, but if not, how can you work to build that up? Sometimes food trucks and those types of temporary vendors will come in, and when it's successful, they're the people that move into your permanent spots. So it can be your farmers market vendors or those types of folks. And now we're done.
Yeah, you can hang on to. You can probably hear me back there. Is that good? And Kathy, where'd Kathy go? She's way back there. Are we good until like 3:30? No. 2? Okay, 2. Okay, so we've done one city and we got 4 more to go. So we'll watch our. Yeah, we'll pick it up a little bit here. We talked about but we have a lot of great things to share, obviously, and so and we're passionate about what we do. So let's go to the next slide. Auburn, beautiful landscape. The street trees in the residential neighborhood, by the way, are gorgeous. We want you to think about what happens in 10 years. Start planting smaller trees now, that when you start losing these, you've got other ones to take their place. It's beautiful. Notice the trees here in the commercial area. They're a type of tree that's very dense and kind of low to the ground, and they tend to block the storefronts. And so, go to the next slide. We'd like you to think about, instead of those types of trees on the left, like Bradford pears and crab apples and lindens, that block views, they make it dark, they attract birds that then poop, we'd like you to think about street trees on the right. London plane trees, sycamores, hackberries, oaks, ginkgos. They have a bigger canopy, but they block less because that canopy's way up there. And they create shade, which you desperately need in all your downtowns, and they draw your eye down to the retail activity. Linkages is common to all your cities. Auburn's especially one of them. So we want you to be able to tell the story when you start at the Little Green Truck coffee shop and work your way up to Moore's Market. Every 100 feet, give us something to look at, something to read. Tell the story of Auburn with a sign. Maybe it's combined with a bench or a piece of public art or a little grove of trees or flowers. Give me something I can see it. What's that next stop on my journey in Auburn? And then when I get to the north end, that's an important gateway. Maybe there's a special gateway landscape that's a bench and it has the horticultural patterns on the back of it and it says Auburn to really celebrate that north end. This building, this is very gracious, and she let us into her bar. It's a two-story building. Let's work on getting that T111 plywood off of there so we can see the beautiful windows and brick behind it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we'd much rather see the authentic facade as opposed to the cover-up. Before we go to Wall Lake, I got ahead of myself. I did want to share, sometimes people ask, how can I evaluate design? And I tend to share 5 or 6 words. So if some of you are writing this down, you might do that and you can share it later. Authentic. It needs to feel authentic. It needs to be true to your community. So whatever authentic means to you in terms of the context of where you live, your history, be sure it's real, that it's not artificial. Be sure it's relevant, that it's meaningful for you as well as for your family and friends that come visit you or people from out of state. Make sure it's fun. Everybody likes something that's fun, and fun can be, even learning can be fun, right? So make it educational, fun, share your personality, and then make sure it's memorable or iconic. It's something that you go back to wherever you're from and you say, hey, I was in this city, Auburn, or wherever it might be, and they had this really interesting thing I want to tell you about. So those are ways to, as we share design ideas, think of those words.
All right, now we're going to talk a bit about Auburn, or not Auburn, Wall Lake. And in case you're wondering, Wall Lake is not alphabetically right after Auburn, but this is the order in which we visited them. And I'm going to pick things up and go real quickly. Who wants me to do this? I'm going to go real quickly because I know that a lot of the reoccurring themes that you're already have heard about, you're going to be hearing about again. Again, in Wall Lake, it was beautiful. It was nice and clean. Again, some great flowers. Great job on that everywhere we visited. We did have a lot of strengths that were very, very evident. You had some national stories to tell. Your Andy Williams story, of course, the birthplace, and the Cookies barbecue sauce. We heard that you'd had some successful grant applications, were able to get some resources in. We heard from your folks that you were not an ordinary small town, that you had some resources available that not others did. We also looked around and saw your beautiful, great building stock. We loved, again, your beautiful community center gym. It was just gorgeous. The survey citizens that were distributed, the input that you received from the community, we heard that there were 65% of those that were returned, and you were listening to those responses. You were listening to what they were saying about things that you wanted to see happening in Wall Lake and implementing those ideas. We also saw a lot of great quality of life amenities. The bowling alley, a lot of bowling alleys this side of the world. The pool, the park, playground, the elementary schools, some great businesses we also saw. A little variety of the retail that we didn't see in all of the communities. Some full-service hardware. We heard the only full-service hardware store in the county. 2 restaurants, a brand new pizza place. A new restaurant, recruiting a new restaurant's not always easy, so it's great to hear that you have a new pizza place. But we didn't get to try it, so we're going to have to come back. Also, a grocery store. It's great to have a grocery store and lumber yards. We saw those in a lot of our communities. Again, the revenue streams. You had a TIP district, some TIP that you were using, that funding. The rest of the communities that if you are not using that funding stream, you can certainly talk to the, I'm trying to talk too fast here. You can talk to the folks in Wall Lake to get their ideas and their input about how that's done. And some incentives that would be available for new businesses, those are available. But again, as Robin mentioned, you didn't have the information fleshed out to be able to tell people right off what you had available. You had to wait to have them come to you. People aren't always all that creative in what they think that they need or know that they need. So you might want to be able to have some of those ideas at the tip of your fingers so that you can pull out, hey, we've got a sign grant, we've got a facade grant, we have this grant or that you can help them with. Of course, you did have some suggestions that we would like to make.
You had a welcome sign. We saw a lot of great welcome signs across the county. And this is a very nice example of a welcome sign, but you can make it even better by adding some landscaping, some flowers, maybe some lighting. Housing. In all of the communities that we visited, there was a need for additional housing. Young people didn't have a place to live. There's certainly the upper floor residential that we love to see you take advantage of in your downtown areas. We also heard that the potential for a new housing area outside around the lake development in the future, that there would be some incentives available to bring out some city services out to that area. But think about something kind of new and something cutting edge and something out of the box, some tiny houses, maybe a little tiny house district. That's really on the cusp of the now ideas, and it would be very expensive. You can buy a tiny house online for $20,000 or make one yourself for even less. And that's the type of price point that you're going to be able to lure some young folks in to come and stay. There's another idea that I'm not sure if that would be something that you want to look into, but we did hear that there were some senior citizens that were considering moving into an assisted living area. Would it be possible, rather than to leave those homes empty, for the folks that are moving into those residential spaces for seniors, if they could make those places affordable for the young couples, perhaps help them with a payment that's made on payments to you, or maybe a reduced price, or some sort of a mentorship for the seniors with the young families to get them to look at staying and living in Sac County. The first thing that, of course, jumps out to all of us when we came into town, except for Maya, of course, who had no clue who Andy Williams was you need to take advantage of those stories that you have, those national stories to tell. We heard from the folks that we met with that it was a city of energy. And I think that city of energy meant not only do you have that city electrical, the municipal electrical power, but you also had energetic people that were wanting to make things happen and weren't going to give up until they did. But some of those stories that you have to tell, maybe Andy Williams is really ho-hum to all of you guys, and especially you think with the young folks, they don't care about Andy Williams, but each and every one of us, except Maya, had a story to tell about Andy Williams. Travis is a huge fan, so we had to have his picture, of course, taken in front of the birthplace as he broke into the Little Moon River. That was Robin's Christmas album that she remembers from her youth, and from still every year they play that. And of course my son's name is Andrew William, not that I was naming him after them. But we all had a story to tell about Andy Williams, and we all had to jump out and get our picture taken in front of his home. There are lots of ways that you can take advantage of that national notoriety. I know that, I understand that the city has the rights to the Moon River. So maybe you don't even want to use the name Andy Rivers in your marketing, but if you put together a Moon River Festival, what fun would that be? And there's lots of plays on words that you could use to have that sort of a festival. Your tourism committee, I know that there's a statewide or a countywide tourism group that's working on this. I don't know if there's a group in Wall Lake that's working on tourism, but it's certainly, I think, a great opportunity for a new festival, a new event. Another thing that we were surprised to hear about was the Cookies barbecue sauce. Now, for years I managed a barbecue event, and I know that just about every community across the state has some sort of a barbecue festival. And I know, I've met Speed Herring at a lot of them. So he travels around the state and he goes to barbecue festivals. He has met a lot of barbecuers. And a lot of those barbecuers think in their dreams that someday they want to open up a restaurant in a downtown. Would it be possible to visit with Speed to talk about possibly having him recruit a barbecue restaurant to town? I don't know if he'd be willing to mentor that person and maybe invest in that sort of a business, but it's just a shock in a community where they have Cookies barbecue sauce made here, but you don't have a barbecue restaurant, and I love my barbecue. If at least you're not going to have a restaurant, do consider urging your restaurants to have some barbecue on the menu. We didn't see too much of that across the county. I don't know that we saw any of it in Wall Lake, but I know that a barbecue festival is an easy thing to put on. Kansas City Barbecue Sanctuary, these folks who do barbecues love their barbecue. They come and they sleep with their barbecue pits, and it's huge money. And it's tourism. People would want to come here and stay in your community. What's this one say? Buildable infill lots. You have a lot of buildable infill lots available for potential homes or potential commercial spaces. We also heard that there were city incentives available to help to develop those. We also heard, for the most part, that although your community is neat and clean, and we saw that it was neat and clean, there's always room for improvement. We took a little picture of all those cigarette butts in the corner there, a little butt brigade. Wouldn't hurt to clean those up in the mornings. But also there's always some weeds, no matter where you are. Stop down, stoop down, pick up some litter. We didn't see much, but there's always room for improvement. I know that the city has some money for potential grants, perhaps a sign grant. I believe there was a very small one. You could look at creating a matching grant instead, taking off some of those skins and putting some new ones in, or consider a window program. You have some great amenities for young families, but we did hear that there was a shrinking population. So I don't know if the young families are providing input from those surveys. I do know that they were involved in this new lovely playground equipment out here, but those young people are still leaving. You have a shrinking population. Would you be able to put together a young leaders group who could get together to talk about things that they want to see happen here? Ask them for their input. Take on a project. Maybe they want to take on a mural project. I looked at the school, and you look at the windows that they replaced, the much larger windows with all of that white space, those look like a canvas to me. I can see having some painting done on those, but young people could steer a project like that. And then add some activities, some programming to your spaces, like bounce houses every time you've got an event, something for young families to have fun with. And last, I have one more. There was some discussion about connecting your downtown to the Sauk bike trail. I'm certainly not an expert, none of us are right here, but there are some grant possibilities through the DOT. I believe that there are 3 Iowa DOT trails funding sources. If you go online and read more about theirs, there was one that was just due July 1st, but I think there's another one that is due in October, so do look into that sort of thing.
So Wall Lake, definitely, it's like kids. The 5 cities are like your kids, right? You love them all equally, but Wall Lake you love a little bit more, maybe. I don't know. I love Andy Williams. The things in the south, again, Andy Williams' home. The agricultural equipment recycling business, it's a big deal around the country. Maybe you also leverage that as well as the lumber yard. And so again, linkages for community is what makes us communities. We're better 1 + 1 + 1 = 4 or 5, not the separate by themselves. So how do you link these together, those events, starting at the caboose and the depot with some signage, benches, public art, shade trees. The logical connection on the southwest corner there as I make the turn off the highway and head into downtown is a great place to maybe put a piece of old equipment that's, it can be rusty, but it's unique. Maybe I haven't seen an International Harvester that model or that age. And then draw me down into your Main Street corners. The infill that you have, that you're currently advertising is a great site, proactively push that. But you've got so many alleys in your downtown. You've actually got 2 alleys on your north-south Main Street that you could probably vacate and create 2 more development sites, and those would be available that you control and can give away. Keep going. So this is one way to tell the story. Maybe there's a panel of aluminum, and they can print right on that aluminum now with 4 colors. It's very durable. And so at each of these stops, every 100 feet, starting at the caboose and the depot and going up to the grocery store and the community center, I have a place to sit in the shade and look at this panel, and it has a graphic and it tells me something important about the city and its history or its future. And was looking at something different in terms of the benches to make it relevant to, you know what, that thing is slid over. To make it relevant to Wall Lake. And so with the lumber yard, maybe you find it's just a big old raw piece of timber, and maybe you get one of those old agricultural equipments and hook it up to it, and that becomes your bench. And it says something about your lumber business and your agricultural equipment business as well. These are great examples of stores that have the upper housing opportunities as well as a good first floor retail. If you go just to the left of that, so there's an infill site. New construction is hard to pencil out, and that's why you see so little of it. But if you go with a stick-built structure, 20 foot wide, so it doesn't have a lot of structural things happening inside. It's basically a big shell. And big simple windows that you go to the catalog, they're not custom. How do you create this new building in your downtown on your infill site? Big windows to let people see who's inside there eating, to display a food case, opportunities for upper story residential, keeping it maybe 10 feet from the adjacent buildings for fire code issues, but fill in those gaps with either a piece of public art or a really neat custom fence that only has to be 10 feet long, but all of us could probably build a really cool fence if it's only 10 feet long. And that's that same building from the side. It's not very big. It's 20 by 40, so 800 square feet. But a lot of businesses, you know, that's enough to get them that critical mass to have a revenue stream. Making sure the sidewalk's extra deep so you can have outdoor dining. This shows the rear entrance for residents and employees, and the staircase comes and brings you right up to the middle of the second floor. So you don't have a bunch of halls up there that cost money. You can either have 1 or 2 units up there, and you have a utilities and restroom core in the middle.
Alrighty, so moving on to Lakeview. So you guys obviously have the lake. It's a huge asset. You know that as well as the soft rail trail that comes in. So bicycling has become a huge recreational opportunity, and a lot of people are spending a lot of time doing that. Make sure you're getting them from the trail into the downtown, so look at opportunities for that. We heard that you had a lot of strong financial partners, and we heard that in every community, that there are strong banks, community banks, who are engaged and give back, and that is wonderful. So continue to build upon that. Your Lakeview Blue, and we've seen it everywhere, you are building on your brand, so own it and keep going with it. I think it is something that sets you apart a little bit, so continue to build on your brand. And that is something to think about in every community. Whether you promote your brand or you let someone else, they will promote it for you, and it might not be what you want them to say about your community. So you guys as the local leaders need to be the ones that tell your story. So tell your story, own it, and tell it over and over again, and be consistent when you're developing that brand. Like it or not, Lakeview, you are a tourism community. And I also have the credit card picture on there because as a business specialist, I can tell you, you need to accept credit cards, no matter what size your business. And I know there are fees attached to them, and I will just tell you, as I mentioned previously, my husband and I owned the grocery store in our home community that had been in his family for 60 years. And I can tell you the conversation when we decided we were going to accept a credit card. We were going to let people pay for their groceries with credit cards. My bookkeeper, who had been there for 40 years, thought we were she was ready to put us in a spaceship and shoot us to the moon. She thought it was the stupidest thing ever. She said, you should never do that. Well, we decided to do it. And I will tell you, by the time we sold our store, it was 70% of our sales, and our revenue was higher because, as we've all said, we swipe our cards and it's just easy. So if you are going to be open to visitors, open to people spending their money, and our younger demographic, everything is on this. If my son's phone is dead, life is over. He can't find his way home. His money's all on his phone. So this is where our new customers are going. So you need to be able to think about that. And again, work those fees into your pricing, but accepting credit is a part of doing business in this day and age. So you guys need to find out a way to do that. And you also need to think like a tourist. Think like those people who have never been here. Can I find your businesses on Google? Because we're all driving around with this, and this is how we find things when we don't know where we're going. So make sure all of your businesses in the county have claimed their site on Google. If you don't know how to do that, let us know. We'll bring somebody in to show you how to do that. But think like those types of things. You need to always think and improve your signage. try to walk around and drive around your communities like you've never been there before, and that you don't know that Kathy's Corner is a great place to get ice cream. Because I will tell you, had we not seen the guy come out with the ice cream, we never would have went in there. And all 6 of us ate ice cream yesterday because we saw that. But there's no signage. There's not even a sign. There's no hours of operation. So let us know so we can support you. Improve your signage. And again, you've got to be accepting credit. You do a good job with events here, and we would encourage you to continue to build on that. You're doing a great job on the stuff that you have. Always figure out ways to get people from your events engaged in your downtown areas where your businesses are. Because again, the longer we linger, we go inside, we open our wallets, and that's what you want us to do. Consider a winter event here, and maybe we see some of those, but on the brochures and all the stuff that we saw, it looks like everything ends here about September or October. And so, what can you do in the winter to encourage people to enjoy the lake and outside? Again, continue to build on your brand. You're doing it. Be consistent. Use your community logos and your brand on everything you put out there. Every brochure, and be consistent. If it's going to be Lakeview blue, then it's going to be that blue on everything with the same font and everything, and all of you can do that as well. Because again, if you don't tell your story, someone else will tell it for you, and it might not be the story that you want them to hear. And again, social media, as I said, has become the #1 way that many of us find out about things. So we all need to be engaged on that, and if you need some training in that, contact us and we can help you start to build that in. As it comes to business development here, look for ways to do shop small campaigns. How can you encourage people to know what products they can buy in your community? And we like to tell the story of our friends in Hampton, small community. Their shop local campaign was to encourage everybody that lived in their community to buy their toilet paper in town. Yeah, sounds kind of funny. How many people live in this room buy toilet paper for your house? You all do. It's a product that we buy every day. And so just by encouraging people to buy that one product locally, they built this whole campaign around it. They did all kinds of stuff. Pretty soon all the school kids were going, well, Mom, we have to buy our toilet paper here. We can't buy it at Walmart. We have to buy it in town. I still recycle my milk jugs because my children taught me to do it when they were in school. So look for ways that you can engage your youth as they're learning. They're going to help their parents do it too. But how can you do that kind of shop small campaign for products that you have in your community? Signage and displays. Can you create things and have signage that tells people, here's what I get inside the store? Because we may not know. Are there incentives for business development? And I think Maya talked about that earlier. All of you said when we met with you that, well, we would be open to that. Well, put together the programs so we as small business owners and people who are interested know and talk about them. Don't just put them together and not publicize them. Let people know, because sometimes you never know who's in the weeds and they're like, oh, I've always wanted to do that and I had no idea this community would help me do that. So talk about the things you're doing. And again, improve your communication. Get your businesses and your city and people talking to each other. The more we talk about what's going on in our community, the more improved people know they can help us all better. And now Chris.
All right, so linkages again. I'm not sure if it's called the stone pier that's at the end of the street that comes off of Main Street, hence the east, but there's a kind of a terminus down there. And so how do I link the fun on the lake with fun on Main Street? And you've got the blue lights that go down there, so that's terrific. Are there other things that you can do to make that linkage? I was throwing out the fish walk. So again, every 100 feet, it's a fish. And you come across a bluegill and you learn about bluegills, or maybe you learn the biggest bluegill caught here at the lake or whatever. And there's a bench again, there's a piece of public art, there's a shade tree. And every 100 feet, I'm being lured up to the corner of Main Street. Let's keep going. And we've talked about Kathy's Corner. It's a really linchpin between City Hall and Kathy's Corner. That's a great pivot point between the lake and downtown. So there's some dumpster trash receptacles you can kind of see in the slide, on the left-hand slide. So you could put a fence around it, or you could build an ice cream cone fence. And again, it's kind of fun, you know, it's memorable. I'd come and have my picture taken in front of the ice cream cone fence, and it can be bright colors, but it hides those dumpsters while saying they sell ice cream. And then I forgot they actually do sell sandwiches in there, so I had to add the hamburger gate. So that's how you get in and out of the hamburger gate. And then a harvest table. You're always looking for a place to sit as quick as possible before your food either gets cold or melts. So just a big, long, simple wood picnic table with a big, long wood benches. Again, that's a half-a-day project for some good carpenters. As a place to sit, it can be brightly painted. Maybe it's painted blue. And I meet other people because just like here, you know, there's 12 of us, and I've never met you, but if you're at my table sharing a meal, I'll maybe say hi and then get to know you. So again, is it fun? Is it authentic? Does it speak to a resort type experience? And so we loved this shop, and this is a new shop owner, beautiful building, but we had no idea what was happening inside there. So something real simple. Is a couple of graphics, 3M graphics. I don't need to know that it's called haberdashery. You know, that's great that he likes that name. What I need to know is that there's a giant fish and some giant fishing lures, and that tells me what's happening inside there and lures me inside to the building. So a symbol will say a lot more than a name that maybe is not clear to me. And we love your market square and the events you have in there. It kind of leaks as you look to the east, to the backside. And so we had an idea. You know, there's a piece of art. It's a fish riding a bicycle because we were a trailhead for the trail. So those are two events that maybe you leverage together. And we planted a couple of trees in the back as well. And we love the porta potty, but if it can be something nice from porta potty someday, that'd be great too, obviously. Again, the picnic tables, again, maybe that's a 2-hour Boy Scout project with a bucket of paint and get some bright blue paint on those tables. And I don't have a cool graphic to show you, but the back sides of your commercial is really unique. You have those really shallow commercial blocks. They're only about a half block deep. So you're constantly driving by the service areas. So think of a program that maybe says there's a standard fence that screens dumpsters, or maybe you go the other route and you paint the dumpsters bright blue, you know, it's authentic, it's a dumpster, you know, live with it. But be sure you recognize people are seeing the back sides of those shops at all times. You've probably got the highest residential price point in the county. I don't know that for a fact, but I suspect because of like you are. And so you're probably a good candidate for infill lots. Duplexes are very cost effective. Sometimes they look a little awkward to me. Sometimes all you see is garages. This is a duplex that doesn't look like a duplex. And the common wall is a garage. So you don't have someone playing loud music in their family room next to your bedroom. There's always a garage as a buffer. This shows an alley in the back, the public street in the top with front porches. And then go to the next view. That's what it looks like from the street. So it looks like very much a traditional lake resort cottage that has a front porch, and you don't even know it's attached because that attachment's happening in the back. But it's very cost effective. Again, that 20-foot width, so structurally it's really easy to build out 2x4s. A larger scale is if you have a double lot that's available for infill, are these affordable cottages. So these are the tiny homes that Terry was talking about. I lived for a year in a home that was 900 square feet. It was a temporary thing, but I actually loved it. These are about 900 to 800 square feet. You can have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and it lives just fine. Most of these don't have garages. 2 of them at the top have an attached garage. And then in the upper corners, those are detached garages that you can rent or own as a part of your house to the south. They all face into this common courtyard, little lawn area. There's a little garden up towards the top with porches. So it's almost a built-in community. And you see snowbirds sometimes love these because they know that the neighbors are really close. They're going to keep an eye on their house while they're gone for 2 or 3 months. It's also a great way to increase density because that's 14 units an acre, which is really a high density, which is good because that brings people, that brings tax revenue, but it does it in a very polite and respectful way in terms of the context.
Okay, let's talk just a minute about Odebo. Once again, we were blown away by all of the gorgeous architecture that we saw, especially at the bank as we're driving into town. What a wonderful asset. There were too many buildings that have been demolished over the years, and we're really thrilled that this one has not. We are excited to see that the community has a renewed interest in rescuing and rehabbing these historic structures instead of taking them down. The museums have moved into downtown and have made a really nice critical mass that have created a real tourism destination for you. The Pioneer Home, the schoolhouse, but we did notice that the hours were open, only a very brief period of time, in some instances only open during your event once a year or on demand. We also heard about the largest ranch ever in Iowa. We didn't know anything about that ranch, the 6,000 square foot ranch. There's some really interesting things that we heard about. Had some great businesses. What did I say?
6,000 square feet.
Oh, that's not so big. Acres, I'm a city girl. Last I knew. Lots of great businesses, some great events. The Creek Days has been going on for 25 years. Odebolt Christmas, we heard that you did a great job with that. A single gentleman and his wife, only a gentleman and his wife, wasn't single, was married. But a gentleman and his wife have been working on this for many years and have been doing all of the work themselves, and it sounds like just a really great event. Beautiful community center again, and I was lucky to have gone into that community center for a wedding a while back, and I can tell you it was a great spot to go to for a wedding. Nursing home, elementary, and the high school, and the newspaper. We did see some challenges though, business development. Virtually there was no retail. We understand that there hasn't been any new construction that's happened, particularly in the housing area, for 10, 20 years. Saving buildings is important, but filling those buildings up with something other than museums is what's going to keep people here. You keep mothballing those gorgeous buildings, that's wonderful, but I know how the young folks are thinking. Probably we are thinking we're saving them for them, but unless there's something in them that's of interest to them, if they can shop, if they can go there, if they can do stuff there, that's what's going to keep them in town. We also heard that there was some interest in bringing a grocery store back to town, that somebody is looking at the space. If that does not work, some of our communities that we have worked with do a community-owned grocery store where members of the community go together, become investors in that grocery store so that you can certainly shop in your own hometown. You need to have the people in your community support that grocery store there, or it's not going to stay open. This community is ripe for tourism, but we did get the feeling that perhaps you didn't necessarily want to have tourists coming in and touching stuff and stealing stuff and maybe getting in the way. I think it's a decision that you have to make. If you don't want to open up this community for tourists to come in, okay, but I think you'd be making a big mistake. We do understand that Sac County Economic Development is working on some tourism countywide. Certainly though, you can get online, traveliowa.com, and put all of your events, all of your activities, all of your attractions on that state travel site free of charge. And it's very, very, very easy. You have to put in a password, it'll keep it up there for 1 year. If there's no activity, they'll take it down. So you should do it yourself. Economic Development can do it for you, but if you do it yourself, you can keep it up to date and make sure that all of your latest information is up there. So to get people into town, you've got to advertise, you've got to let them know, you've got to use that social media, you've got to market. We do understand that paid marketing is very, very expensive, so take advantage of those free tools that are out there. Mix that heritage education and make that available for the young people too. Get the young kids to write stories, color pictures, take a tour. Get the young people interested in the heritage and the history of your beautiful downtown. Oops, missed that one. The building rehabs that are happening now, this row of buildings really needs to be saved. But all of the gorgeous things that you have and that you have done, you need to protect some of those from what we see as possibly not the best type of design. Sometimes to incent good design, you might need to have an incentive, some sort of a grant available locally that's going to pay the difference between doing it cheaply and doing it right. So you might have to spend a little bit more for good design, and so that's why it's important to get some city help in making that happen. Here again, a beautiful, clean community, but there were some weeds in these sidewalks that we saw, probably a little bit more than some of the other spaces. So certainly you can address those, get a crew out to pull those weeds, some empty planters. There's no reason why that we shouldn't have some flowers in those. And then certainly Heritage Square, what a great space, another beautiful amenity in your downtown. But it needs to be programmed all of the time, not just once or twice a year. But music in that area, put some speakers out, get some board games available for people to play, bring in some folks that are going to be doing some playing of those games at some tables. Just make it more user-friendly so people are going to want to get out there and use it.
Let's see, one more slide there, Terry.
This mine? Oh. This county, we have a welcome sign. How's that?
Amazing collection of historic buildings, very rare. It grew up during the City Beautiful movement in the early 1900s, so a really amazing collection. Think about what makes a successful downtown experience. We want to see something interesting every 20 feet as we walk. So if there's something not interesting within 20 feet, make sure there's something, a sign, a graphic on the window, a temporary graphic, something that keeps us engaged. The bank where the movie was filmed is amazing, both inside and out. I used it as an inspiration. I did a little sketch for a potential city hall. Right below it is City Hall in Green on St. Croix, where I go lots of times. Go to the next slide. Here's an idea for a city hall. It's all stick built again, so it's very inexpensive, 2x4 construction. It's one story, but maybe it looks taller because it has taller ceilings. Those are just Pella store-bought windows, but being inspired by the classical forms of the bank. And again, a little room between the existing buildings, but try to fill in the gaps in your downtown with that building and fill in the gaps with the little fence. Memorial, Memorial Circle? Heritage Circle. I knew I had it wrong. No, what's it called? Monument Circle. I knew I had it wrong. Monument Circle, really cool. Beautiful wrought iron fence and an immaculate stone curve around it. But you have to stand in the street right now when you're looking at it. So can we build a curb that comes out and provides the protection for people as they look at it? It also protects those stone curbs and protects that beautiful wrought iron fence from a vehicle hitting it. And then the trees right now hide it. So maybe take those trees out and plant a formal tree grouping that has a high branching that allows me to see through the site and see the buildings in the background, as well as the stone in the middle. And then instead of having to mow that all the time, take the sod out and put in a perennial, a flowering perennial that's very aggressive, that gives it some color and reduces maintenance.
Okay, great, thanks, Dennis. Let's talk about Sac City. Before I do that, though, go back to Hoodie Bolt and Wall Lake, birthplaces of Andy Williams, which I'm a huge fan of. Thank you, Jerry, for mentioning that. Boone River. Anyway, but also too, Hoodie Bolt, you've got the birthplace of Cracker Jack, and I already talked to them about it, but just to stress to reach out and partner with some of those entities that you're not known for yet, and I just thought that was really cool. I called my wife and I was like, hey, guess what? Guess where I was at today? And she knows I love Cracker Jack, so that was awesome. But yeah, definitely capitalize on those possible partnerships. Might not only be birthplaces for events for those partnerships, but also to some revenue streams coming into your community. Sac City. So as Jim mentioned, I'm from Waverly. I've only been in Iowa for about 4 years, so this was my first time to Sac County, thus my first time to Sac City, unlike my colleagues who I think have all visited this area before. So I was coming into this with a lot of fresh eyes, especially when we got to the world's largest popcorn ball. It looks like your city has diminished a little bit in population from the 2000 census, but I still think there's a lot of opportunity for growth and renewal here. So. Let's take a look at the strengths for Sac City. Financially sound. There's a $5.7 million trust that you're able to use for community beautification projects. I don't know what the definitions are or the limitations are on being able to use some of that trust money, but to be able to try to look at some of those really wow projects that you could do in your downtown and you know, somehow relate that or communicate that as beautification would be a good use of some of those funds. You also have some, you also did a facade improvement project that was done through a CBDG block grant. Definitely, as a town that we've used that program several times, encourage all the communities to take a look at how to use a block grant to improve some of the facades in your neck of the woods. I think there was 12 buildings included in that project, I believe, so it was great. Where are my Sac City people? Thank you, okay, you're kind of spread out there. Just want to know who I'm looking at before I go out there. Pursuing of grants for an upcoming streetscape initiative. This is another great revenue stream for you. This pays for benches and bump outs, planters, trees, and greeneries and whatnot. You're also taking a look at possibly turning your main street from 4 lanes into 3 lanes because it used to be a state highway, and upgrading your underground infrastructure. We right now in Waverly are going through that exact project. Our main street is a state highway. The DOT came in 2 years ago and said, we're going to tear up your downtown. Great. But it's a project that the town has actually been looking forward to for about 50 or 60 years. And so when you do have that kind of project, it does cause a lot of mayhem, a lot of stress. But if you stay on the positive side of it, you're renewing your infrastructure underneath, you're adding streetscape to your downtown. It's going to look beautiful in the end of the project. Just some really great opportunities there for you with pursuing some of the grant money for you to do that. So it's awesome. And also, too, I wanted to mention that being financially sound, you've got a lot of community-minded financial institutions in Sac City, from what I understand from talking to the local community leadership. So take advantage of that. They get credits for the amount of money that they put back into your community. So take advantage of those financial institutions. Strong business services, locally owned hospital, 2 banks, hardware store, pharmacy, home decor florist. You've got 1 restaurant, could use more, but you've got some really great diverse business community in Sac City, and that's always amazing to see. We'll take a look at some of the empty industries in a minute. Oh, sorry, I do that. Attractive amenities. How do we go down on this, Terry? There we go. Attractive amenities in Sac City, the county courthouse, obviously, because you're the county seat. You've got some upcoming fiber optical communications coming in. That's exciting. You definitely want to make sure that you've got those high-speed internet speeds for those credit card machines that you're all going to put in your stores, right? So we definitely like seeing that. Well-maintained parks and fairgrounds. We saw this a lot throughout the entire county. Really well-maintained public areas, and that's really vital for not only tourists and visitors, but also your residents appreciate it as well and see where their tax dollars are going. The community hospital, historic village, there by the world's largest popcorn ball, and obviously the world's largest popcorn ball, and then events such as Friday Night Live concert series, which is a great amenity for your community. If you could try to do more of those events in your downtowns, that'd be great to be able to give some more life and nightlife to that area. So let's take a look at some of the challenges and opportunities. I put here high traffic opportunity. My understanding is that 200 people come to Sauk City every day to work. Take advantage of that. That's huge. It's a huge number for the size town that you are. And so the great thing about details here, which we took a picture of, is just the attractiveness of the facade. Doing a little bit of decorating, seasonal decorating, public planters and flowers, and keeping sidewalks clean, stuff like that. It's really a great opportunity to be more inviting to people coming in to your community. Also, too, think about those people that do come into work. Sometimes people want to shop for stuff that they need back at home and then leave. And so taking a look at some of those retail opportunities for those folks is a strong encouragement as well. Upper story opportunities, you've heard a lot about this already, so I'm not going to go through a lot of it, but we did see a very wonderful example of upper story living in Sauk City, and hopefully this will be a spur to encourage more of that. We recently completed a project in Waverly of 18 new living units within 5 buildings in our downtown. All the units are rented and being lived in. And I think IEDA says, $19,000 of economic impact per year per every person that lives in your downtown. That's huge. Do the numbers. So if you've got, 10, 20 opportunities to have living units in your downtown, and you've got 1 to possibly 2 or 3 people living in each of those units, that's a lot of revenue for your town. Also too, let's not forget as well, we talk about upper story, that also does increase the taxable value of those buildings. So then your city is being able to get more revenue from those projects in addition. Grant program specific to opening windows in all the downtown buildings. There's a lot of closed off windows in Sauk City in the upper stories that we saw, and why I kind of tapped on that a little bit. If you could create a grant program that would be specifically for opening up those windows and putting actual windows back into those spaces, that might be very beneficial. And I think the Main Street program has some examples of other communities that have done that. They can send those resources to you. And that grant program could open up the way to more upper story living, possible upper story businesses, obviously resulting in higher revenue. Retail vacancies. So we saw a lot of great retail. Some of the things that we didn't see though was clothing. And so maybe take a look at your Main Street community. So you have a economic, economic vitality committee. We call it business development in my town, but the committee that's tasked with going out and recruiting businesses, definitely clothing should be one of those. Shoes also was something that was missing, and then restaurants, diverse restaurants in a town, giving people options for eating out is a huge attraction. So taking a look at those opportunities. But we did love the picture. And this is definitely a great example of what you can do with some of those vacant spaces and those window displays, putting up a sign there and saying, hey, this is a business opportunity. Did a great job with that. I know that when I toured West Union, Robin's hometown, they did a great program with that as well. So take a look at cleaning up those window displays and putting in some attractive displays that could attract new businesses. So, community recommendations. Take a look here. So, more downtown beautification. That was something that was brought up with our meeting with community leaders. Again, you're a Main Street community, so your design committee should be looking at doing some of those initiatives. But if not them, maybe taking a look at some volunteer efforts. Maybe it's a service club, a Kiwanis club, a Rotary club, something like that to help out with that mission. More events either in or include a downtown presence. We talked about that with Friday Night Live events, or maybe some other retail events that could include the downtown. It doesn't always have to be downtown. I understand as a fellow Chamber Main Street person that I'm constantly reminding my community that we're a community-wide chamber, but with a focus on downtown with our Main Street program. So as long as you're including the downtown in some of those events, that's excellent. Housing, affordable and market rate. We saw this kind of county-wide too, and it's great that you're doing a housing study. I'm going to guess that the housing study is going to come back and say you need a little bit of everything. And so if you take a look at the housing opportunities in Sauk City, you're probably going to need some more market rate or even L&M rate. Living units, also probably some multifamily units throughout the community. City incentives to attract new businesses and residents alike. Again, TIF, there should only be one F on that, sorry. TIF, or urban revitalization programs. If you're not utilizing those, which we talked to all the communities about, I think there was one community that was actually utilizing TIF, but take a look at that. It's a very successful program, and it really helps to attract some businesses. Design guidelines for downtown buildings, again, taking a look at how to shape and create the downtown that you really want it to look like. Guidelines are great. We currently are looking at that, starting that process in Waverly, and the great folks at Main Street can help you with some resources there as to how your downtown could look. Taking off some of those metal awnings and actually, adding canvas awnings, or taking off the plywood in front of the facades and exposing that original brick again. Some of those great things, you can require that when you have guidelines when people come into town and buy a building and want to upgrade the design of it. Minimum maintenance codes, we talked about that. The Downtown Resource Center has great resources for that. Just want to make sure that we're always keeping our buildings maintained really well. Northside entry welcome, we didn't see a welcome sign in that. I know that was kind of concerned with the folks that we talked with. Again, it's probably some really easy projects, kind of like what Dennis had talked about with some other communities, of just being able to build some kind of welcome. But people always want to feel welcomed no matter what direction they're coming in from. So never take one of those entryways into your community for granted. Strengthen partnerships between City and Chamber Main Street. we can't do it by ourselves, whether you're the city, whether you're the Chamber Main Street program, whether you're the leader of a group of volunteers, we all gotta work together. And so I think the key to a very successful community in working on a lot of these different projects that all of us have talked about up here is to have a really, really strong partnership with each other. Make sure that your hometown pride person or your Chamber Main Street person is working together with city staff, with volunteer groups, with any kind of organization that helps to lead your community. It's very important that you have a strengthened partnership with all those people. And then I wrote on your community business relation building. So that partnership leads to that effort. Build relationships with your different businesses. I know my first year on the job, all I did was walk around and walk into businesses, introduce myself, and talk to folks and ask questions. How's your business going? What's going on? How can the Chamber Main Street program help you? Strengthen those ties. I'm talking really to community leaders in this portion, but that really does help kind of solidify a community together, especially at downtown. All your merchants, they know each other, whether you know it or not. They know each other and they talk to each other. But you want to make sure that they're also talking with city leaders, chamber leaders, Main Street leaders, those kinds of things. And that can really be a huge asset in time to come. Also, too, we talked about an ambassador program. We'll talk a little bit more about that on a countywide level. But there is an ambassador program through the Chamber Main Street program. But it seems like it's more of a social club than anything else. Really need to make that a working ambassador program. And an ambassador program can be used in any community. But when I say working, I mean like actually going and recognizing businesses for their strengths. Whether it's a new manager, they've been open for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, they've expanded a second location, those kinds of things. To really recognize those individuals or those businesses and strengthen those relationships. And since we're talking about that, we're just going to go right into Dennis.
So we looked at the proposal for the Main Street there, improvements in Sac City. We think it's a good plan. We think it could use more street trees. That has a mid-block crossing especially. It would be a great place for more plantings. We think be sure and pay attention to bench locations along that street, especially at the corners. Again, the North Gateway we'll talk about. We also really liked some of the public art that was proposed as a part of this plan. So I think it's in a good direction. Keep going. Suggest some fine-tuning. This is a kind of a good before and after. The building on the right peeled all the plywood off. It's a little bit raw, but it's okay. It looks great compared to the building to the left where it still has the plywood covering it up. So get that stuff off of there. Let authenticity come through. And pay attention to the little details. Love the little lamp there and the signage. Keep going. Upper windows, we talked about it. Some strategies. If you can't get the real windows in there, go to the next slide. You might think about putting some graphics that maybe speak to your community. So a Chautauqua woman looking at a book with a ceiling fan as a picture in the window. Or, I don't know, put pictures of kittens and puppies in there. Anything that's interesting, you know. Something more than just black. A great weekend project to clean up the little pocket park, put a little grass seed down, a couple of inches, and it's much better.
That's in progress.
Thank you, that's good. And in the North Gateway, you got a lot of buildings with a lot of big blank facades, so one way that's really fun with 3M film is just big graphics. So, yeah, right, and tell your story. And you've got lots of that surface along that north. That could be really like an art row. And artists love cheap space. I bet this is the cheapest space in your downtown, so think about that. And the hotel we think is a great opportunity. Looks like a solid building, Center Hall, the corridor, which is easy to subdivide into residential units. Maybe it's a small hotel on the first floor. Maybe the second floor is apartments. Maybe the third floor is you look at a higher end, even a condo ownership if possible.
And the fourth floor.
And the what?
Fourth.
And the fourth floor. That's actually, I was thinking of the fourth floor when I said that. Thank you.
Okay, and since we're talking about a lot of things that we can do together, wanted to put together some ideas for some countywide collaboration efforts. First of all, doing like a countywide digital or printed newsletter. It seemed like in all the communities that we went to, there was not a lot of communication going on internally in the communities, but also throughout the county. So I know that this is something that Bremer County is working on, the county that I live in right now, putting together some kind of newsletter that goes out to all the major communities in the county, and it certainly helps to better the communication efforts. It's also a great opportunity too for cross-marketing and promotional efforts. You can buy ad space, whether it's a digital or printed newsletter, those kinds of things, but it's also great exposure for those events and information, which results, obviously, in more economic impact for the communities. Countywide Ambassador Familiarization Program, talked a little bit about this in the last segment, but getting together and just actually recognizing the different things that are going on throughout the county. Maybe it's a group of community leaders or a group of volunteer leaders from throughout all the different communities. But some ideas behind this could be something like doing a countywide crawl event. Crawl events are really happening right now in a lot of urban areas, and so maybe taking a networking event and moving it around to the different cities throughout the county or whatnot. A cash mob event. This is where everybody gathers up in one place and says, I'm going to commit to spending $20 at this particular store. Could it be a particular community? Absolutely. So you do a cash mob of Auburn. You go to Auburn and you just, everybody spends at least $20 in a store or multiple stores in those communities. Welcoming new businesses or new community leaders, we call it with a sack attack sack. It sounds kind of cheesy, but if you take a sack and you put like different things from all the different communities in Sac County in the sack, and you give it to whoever it is you're recognizing, whether it's a business or an individual, hey, and you can the headline could read, "They got sack attacked." So it's just kind of a fun little out-of-the-box way of thinking about something like that. Partnership opportunities, Hometown Pride or the Economic and Tourism could partner with somebody like Iowa Central College, Community College, excuse me, to take a look at how to get some of those resources, locating resources and developing those resources that you need for some of your downtown efforts. Also talked about there's an existing museum passport program in the county. Build off of that. Could apply to businesses, restaurants, bars, maybe it's some recreational activities that happen throughout the county. It'd be cool just to I know passport programs are really successful. They're not only popular, but they're successful. And so if there's something in it at the end, when you get all your holes punched, your things stamped, it's a lot of fun, and there's a prize at the end of it. Makes it a lot more fun for everybody to do that, but at the same time to be exposed to the different things that they may not have been exposed to before while traveling through the county. And then the last idea that we came up with was something called a movie night series. This could be facilitated by county organizations such as Hometown Pride or Economic Tourism, but they could buy the rights to the films, buy the equipment that needs to happen. Maybe everybody pitches in to help buy the equipment, and every town hosts, maybe once a week throughout the summer or once a month throughout the summer, a movie night. And given your countywide theme of popcorn, prefacing the movies with some local food sales, maybe some popcorn themed games or something like that, that could be really expressive of the popcorn theme around the county. But just doing those kinds of shared events and initiatives throughout the county will not only make your county stronger, but definitely will expose the county and other counties to your individual communities. So that's really exciting to see. Jim?
Thanks, Travis. Well, I just wanted to comment on a couple more things. I mean, we threw a lot at you today, and as I said before, we're going to have a report back in 4 to 6 weeks, and we would love it if that report did not sit on a shelf somewhere. So there are going to be items in that report, there'll be specific recommendations that are going to be real low-hanging fruit, like picking up cigarette butts, and then there are going to be some high fruit, like doing upper story housing. There are going to be items that you're going to say, wow, we can do that, and there are going to be items that you're going to say, they missed the mark on that. We're not doing that, and that's okay. So I think there's got to be a prioritization. And what we're hoping you'll do is each community looks at that report in your section, and the part that Travis just went over with the collaborative efforts, take a look at those things and prioritize them and come up with a plan to do those. We're really not aiming these projects at any one organization. These could go to Hometown Pride, they could go to the city, they could go to the county, to the Lions Club, to some kind of an action team that you put together. So I think you're just all going to have to figure out, based on the funds you have available and the volunteer resources and the importance of the projects, kind of what's a high priority item and maybe what isn't. And if we can help in any way with that, we would be happy to do that. It's real easy too for us to come in here and give you a bunch of projects without giving you like a bucket full of money to do those also. So we understand, you know, you've got to kind of figure this out based on what you can do financially. But I know the Hometown Pride Group has done a very good job with fundraising in some of these communities. There's city funding, you've shown that you can get sponsors from banks and utility companies and businesses, promotional events, foundations. Other communities use GoFundMe campaigns. I've seen communities do a great job of raising money for very specific projects through alumni. So there are ways to raise money for these kinds of things. If you would like other help from us, feel free to call. I mean, if you want one of us or two of us to come in and do like a checkup in 12 months or 6 months to kind of see where you're at, we would be happy to do that. I wanted to mention too that Terry is the coordinator of our annual downtown conference, which is in Waterloo, August 28th to 30th, correct, Terry? And because you participated in this program, we are giving Sac County 10 free registrations for that. So this is where the fight starts. But I think you guys can talk about it. It's a fantastic conference with tours and breakout sessions. Dennis and his dog are co-speaking at the conference. I'm not kidding you. Our first ever dog speaker. So please consider that conference. I wanted to tell you about one, or maybe two other programs, just very quickly. Excuse me. We showed you a lot of buildings that need help in this presentation, and the Iowa Economic Development Authority has some programs to help with those. One of them, Sac City has participated in, and it's the Downtown Revitalization Grant Program, which is a CDBG program. Lots of details, but you can get a lot of money for rehabbing a number of facades in your downtown area. So please either call us or even come over and talk to the Sac City people about that program if you have any interest in that. It's there's not a match required, but it would be very difficult to receive the money for that if the city was not a financial investor and the property owner too. But for communities, there's a population limit, and I forget what it is. Any community can get the 50,000 over, which isn't a problem here in Sac County. But there's also a population limit on the low side too. You can get $500,000 for facades. However, I think it's either 1,000 or 1,500 population. That amount goes down to, is it?
I want to say it's 500, and you need to have a...
No, 500 is the upper level.
500.
I think 250, okay, all right.
And there'll be a limit on how many buildings are required to participate. So in order to get the full, if you're big enough and to get the full 500, you need to have at least a minimum of 10 buildings that are willing to participate in the program. So
and
there are some,
we'll have that information in the report, the contact information, the website. There's also a new program available, and I did not name this program. It's called the Community Catalyst Building Remediation Grant. And it is a program where communities can get up to $100,000 for the rehab of one building, preferably in the downtown, restoration or rehabilitation of a building. It can be two buildings if they are side by side and it's the same ownership. So please ask us about that program. We're doing application workshops in late September and early October. I can't remember the date, but the one closest to Sac County will be in Cherokee. Last year we gave out $1.8 million, so we gave $1,800,000 grants. 40% of those funds have to go to the communities that are 1,500 population and lower. So you're not competing against Des Moines and Dubuque for this money, really. We have $1 million in the fund this year. I almost hate to say this because the camera's on me. Last year it was $1 million. Last year it was $1 million also, and we somehow finagled 1.8 out of it. But I'm telling people $1 million right now, so that's 10 projects. Now, we could have 75 applications for that money too. But as I toured the communities on this trip, I kept thinking about that grant because I could see opportunities. I think when we judged that grant too, the sweet spot for the project that really interested us was a building that perhaps was underutilized on the ground floor with no business, but had potential for a business moving in with a rehab, but also apartments upstairs. That seemed to be the commonly funded program, and I saw some buildings like that in the towns. Lakeview had a lot of buildings like that. We saw some buildings in Sac. A little bit harder for a Main Street town, I think, to get the funds because the word catalytic is very important. It's supposed to be a program where a project that you do catalyzes, is that a word? Catalyzes? Catalyzes other projects in the downtown area. Now the hope is if you've been in the Main Street program for a while, you've already done a lot of that. However, we did have 3 of the 18 recipients last year were Main Street communities. So good program. We're kind of waiting to see. The smallest town that received that grant last year was Clearfield, and I think they have like 300 people living there. So it can be a very good program for small towns.
Is it available for a nonprofit building like a community building / city hall?
Well, those did not score very well. We had some applications from economic development organizations and chambers of commerce that wanted to remodel their building. And I don't think it scored very well generally because it didn't look as catalytic as a new business opening in the downtown. Now, if you've got a beautiful landmark structure where the rehab of that building would just be perfect for the downtown and you think it would spur other projects, maybe. But what I would do is I'd show up at that application workshop with some pictures and questions. And the people that do that, be myself and Jim Thompson and Tim Reinders from our office, we'll be honest about those kinds of things. And you know, it all depends on the competition too. You just don't know what you're going to get in. Any questions? We gave you a lot of stuff. And I hope hopefully it's useful. Like I said, the report will be very specific with recommendations that we send back. And all Dennis's drawings will be in the report also. So we'll kind of handle it in sections like we did the presentation. But we appreciate the hospitality. Had a good time.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy, for making this happen. Appreciate it.